myself, I'm Anna Gong. I'm CEO of Parks Technologies. I founded this company in 2016, and we've been now in over 15 markets, so we're constantly expanding. So I'm proud to call myself probably one of the first solo founders in tech to have taken a Singaporean-based company, enterprise software, globally.
So I'm Gayathri, and I'm the general manager for SUSE, a German organization that's been around for 33 years, and I have a track record of technology, enterprise selling, as well as managing teams across the globe for Hewlett-Packard and Oracle.
Thank you. I'm Sachin Gopalan. I'm the chair of the ASEAN Economic Forum. I used to run the Indonesia Economic Forum, and I still do, which focused a lot on how Indonesia is handling the same issues. And we've had gender inclusion topics very much in the forefront. I also work with a foundation called the InnoTech Foundation, where we support a university program for 250 young women who want to create economic and social impact in their remote areas that they come from. So we support a 4-year scholarship program. This is in the second year now. So we've been involved in such kind of initiatives which are empowering young women to make a change in the place they live in. Because the phenomenon of having to come to a big city to make a living should not be there. You should be able to make impact in wherever you live. And we've been trying to get one girl in a family who can lift that family out of poverty because she's skilled and is capable of delivering a social cause to the community around her. So such kind of programs have a lot of interest, and we are very interested in replicating such kind of programs across ASEAN. So I hope that it'll be able to contribute in some way to some of the discussions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
So hi, I'm Rabiatul. I'm a researcher in A-Star Research. Basically, my research focus is mainly on medical technologies and medical physics. So I did my PhD in physics. So that's where I feel that it's a field that not many people has heard of, or female dominant. So especially medical physics, you hardly heard about it, right? So that's where I decided to make an impact and try to make a difference with my work.
Great,
my
thank
research.
you.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Chandan. I work for a venture capital firm called D Capital, which makes tech investments across the region. Prior to that, I spent close to 10 years at Twitter and in the tech space in consulting. I think both working as a part of a social media platform and now sort of channeling investments into this space, I definitely see a huge gap in terms of where funding is going, where our attention is going, and how do we amplify women voices. So I've done a lot of work around this space over the last few years, so very glad that all of you are sort of driving this conversation and excited about it.
Excellent. So my name is Meri Rosich. I've been in this part of the world, originally from Spain, Barcelona, and I've been in India for about 15 years, in Hong Kong and in Singapore, before that Tokyo, London, New York. I've worked in C-suite roles in data strategy, the transformation, chief data officer recently with Standard Chartered Bank, Visa, before that Samsung. So I've always volunteered with women organizations, driving more adoption of technology, particularly in the education space. And I'm also a professor for MBAs, and I see the power that education has when it comes to lifting women out of poverty and giving them the chance to really uplift their families. So really excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Crystal. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I identify as a brown woman from a minority race, a Eurasian. I was born and raised in Singapore. And my lived experience is that I've been excluded from circles, from groups, and I want to create spaces where other people don't feel that way. So that's kind of taken me to the work that I do, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. And in the different roles I've been, my last one at Google, that was the work that I was really involved in and passionate about. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cyrus. I head up a Blackstone company called IDG Ventures, but I'm here representing a farm or an agro-based empowerment out of Thailand, where there are only women doing horticulture and growth. And we have a local company called Zenson, which is an insurance company, and the CTO is a female who's come up from nothing, and in fact, she's not even a graduate. She's not even a college graduate. So that's our story, and I'm surrounded by successful women. So I wanted to share what I see, being the other sex, on why there is this inclusion or exclusion sometimes.
Great, thank you. So let me kick this off with.
We've got 2 more introductions.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
We've got,
Sita or Po, would you like? Po?
Hi.
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Po. I'm based in Bangkok. Currently I'm in Bali. So what I actually do is we are a community of founder and investor. So the way I started doing is I want every founder who doesn't, any person in Southeast Asia who doesn't have the network or knowledge, or who doesn't have the, luxuries of having the right networks or capital to start off some projects. So my community is trying to, encourage all the founder to meet with the right founder to collaborate together, and also with the investor. That's what I do. And I'm very happy to be in this forums with all those amazing women and the gentlemen too. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sita?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon from Jakarta. My name is Sita Zimpel. I'm working for GIZ, which is short for Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, or German Development Corporation. We are working in this area of government-to-government cooperation with ASEAN partners on behalf of the German government, supporting the realization of sustainable development goals in different areas, different sectors, in fact, in more than 120 countries worldwide. And I'm specifically here representing our projects in the area of regional economic integration, where we are focusing on SME promotion, competition policy, and consumer protection. And I'm happy to share perhaps a different perspective than the rest of you here, also maybe looking more at the policy frameworks that might have an impact on women and women's entrepreneurial endeavors in ASEAN. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for the introductions. We have some mics on the table, so we can pass it around. Because we're gonna cut clips, so don't worry about if you can't be comfortable. So let's go with the biggest or the most popular topic, which is overcoming barriers. I think with various.
opening
Let me
remarks.
give the opening remarks.
Okay.
It's okay, we cut it out.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Anna, for that excellent introduction and for hosting and moderating this whole panel. So I'd just like to add a few comments which I think can help set some kind of a framework for our discussion. First thing is gender inclusion works both ways. So it is about women and men. And there are issues on both sides which eventually will come up, whether they come up today or not. That's one thing. And gender inclusion sometimes has been misunderstood or misrepresented, or sometimes creates wrong expectations. So if you were to look at it a little under the layer, what exactly are the things that we should focus on or probably include in the discussion that today we have, is that in my experience, we find that women bring a very different set of skills to the table. Men bring another different set of skills to the table. So the story of inclusion and giving equal opportunity should work in context of what are those skills. For example, there are so many jobs, there's evidence here that women are much better at a lot of roles, a lot of functions, a lot of kinds of businesses, which women do way better. And men do certain kinds of jobs differently, and the skills that come to the table to run it successfully are different skills. So I think the beauty of this whole topic is in understanding and giving importance to what are those skills which come to the table. Because if you have that, then our job becomes easy. All we have to do is to amplify those skills and make those skills into a force multiplier. In which case, both genders are working towards a common purpose of bringing out the best of everybody and creating the best outcomes for everyone. So I think that context should also be understood by the larger public, because sometimes we get caught in some of the problems that we face, which are there. And there is one way of solving problems that we face today. And there's another way of how do we take this and build it into a different direction going forward by giving amplification and force multiplier support to those skills and those opportunities that can be driven by the respective genders. So that's basically how I felt that it could be something that could be discussed alongside all the other issues that are being discussed today. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to being an active participant of this discussion today, and I look forward to hearing all your views, and some of these we hope we can action into real programs, because that's what ASEAN Economic Forum is here to do. We are the industry connect between the ASEAN governments and the nations with the industries that want to be in ASEAN. And these industries that are in ASEAN are from within ASEAN, or they can be from the outside part of the Western world who also want to come and operate in ASEAN. So in all of this lies an opportunity for the topic we discussed today, that which kind of these new sectors can be built by which gender, in what way, so that we have good outcomes for everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you Sachin for opening the remarks. We are all very passionate about economic growth, and I think today's kickoff and inaugural event was to really hone in on women's leadership, and what does that look like, and how do we impact and affect the community for driving economic growth. It's a 700 million region, which is quite substantial. However, knowing the GDP per country is very diverse across this ecosystem. So just to kickstart, there are multiple topics that I am quite passionate about, and since we're talking about women's leadership in this region, the strategic impact for women leaders. One of the studies that McKinsey recently did was women in leadership, or having a diverse leadership in the upper quartile. 25% of these big corporates, as well as multinationals, have actually a higher profitability outcome, right? We're really moving the needle for the shareholders' return on investment. So I would like to understand from, and anyone can actually chime in, how can ASEAN leverage the unique perspectives of women leaders to innovate and drive sustainable growth across the region? Would anyone like to comment on that? Sita or Po?
Well, I mean, from my side, perhaps I can just quickly provide a small snapshot here, just to preface also with a disclaimer that the work that we do on economic integration with ASEAN does not specifically empower or link to empowering women, but we do have pilot activities and mainstreaming activities to make sure that these special perspectives and skills that were mentioned in the introduction are not lost. And in this, as an organization that works for the German government, we are also guided by what we call the feminist development policy. So in all of the work that we do, all of the activities we implement together with our partners, we try to infuse a gender perspective in a manner that would make sure that feminist here does not only relate to, as you rightly said, not only relate to empowering women, but also looking at the role of men, and also how can we bring in other marginalized, disadvantaged, or perhaps otherwise vulnerable groups of society. In this are the groups that we would want to protect, that we would want to provide special support to, that we want to devote more attention to. And in our work with GIZ, we are looking at it in three ways. We're looking at strengthening the so-called 3 Rs, which is access to resources, representation in social, political, economic terms, and also with respect to rights. This is the 3rd R. The most straightforward, perhaps, entry point for this discussion is always, I think, entrepreneurial support or women's economic empowerment when it comes to also bringing them in as women-owned enterprises or women-operated businesses. And here what we observe in our work with respect in particular to, again, access to resources and representation is that we need to create and that we need to strengthen platforms for women, so that so we have women that can exchange with each other about this particular barriers that they may be facing, but also they are able to support each other. We usually say that with the 3 R's that we want to advance: resources, representation, rights. What stands in the way are the 3 B's. So what are the 3 B's? Of course, you're all aware. First is bureaucratic and administrative burdens or barriers. Then the household or familial obligations and burdens that women very often tend to still face, in addition to whatever career ambitions or prospects or business endeavors they are pursuing. And then last but not least, the biases, the societal stereotypes and the traditional norms and notions that sometimes bar women from certain sectors or segments in the economy and in business. In ASEAN, we have, when it comes to SME promotion, particular attention to these platforms in both ways. Both we are strengthening women entrepreneurial associations, because we feel or we observe that traditional chambers of commerce and industry sometimes are very male dominated. Even young entrepreneurs associations very often have more men than women members. But that is only one side. We also want to elevate women's voices and visibility across countries. And this is where our work with what we call the ASEAN Access platform comes in. ASEAN Access strives to basically facilitate access of all businesses, particularly SMEs, and also particularly women entrepreneurs, to information about market opportunities, about regulatory requirements for import, for export, but also we facilitate business matchmakings. And we have so-called ASEAN Access ambassadors that are appointed by member states to promote ASEAN access, to mobilize their networks and communities, to partake in the activities that we facilitate on the platform. And these women, even though they are assuming a pro bono position with being ASEAN Access ambassadors, they've been telling us that it helps them actually to build their own visibility, to be somehow seen, to inspire others, and to, with this, also tap into new opportunities and networks. And so the platform, so I think providing a platform and bringing people into certain platforms so that these women endeavors can be more visible, more seen, and also more leveraged is one of the ways where we can, bring in a greater perspective on women's success in ASEAN. But that's just one side, but I wanted to maybe kick us off on this and see if others resonate with that as well.
Anyone would like to comment on that?
Sure. Your question was around women leadership, and we talked about a fair bit of incidents, but my personal observation is that the larger, more progressive countries, and I'm talking mainly the US, is far behind when it comes to, there's a reason why they call it all boys club. Why is Wall Street so exclusively all boys club? I don't know the answer to that. There has been some sort of forced integration, and I mean they are compelled into taking women, but I still believe it's very superficial and very cosmetic. It's a tick in the box. I must have a minority, so I got in someone. I must have a woman on my board, so I inducted someone. I don't think they're sincere enough to do that. And I believe that's really the pivot or the starting point. If the bigger boys, and I'm talking Wall Street titans, the trillion-dollar industries, if they were the ones to champion that sincerely, not cosmetically, I think that trickle-down effect will be a lot better and the take-up will be exponential. The other side of the pyramid, I don't think we need to worry too much. Majority, like I said, out of my 62 leaders or farm workers, they're all women. Majority of the SMEs in the Philippines are all women. Majority of the food and beverage stores in Malaysia are all women. So there is another side. And it's not like the men are fighting, this is my right, I too want it. So I think to Siti's point and to your point, it's not an integration, just some industries are shamefully behind. And I think the voice needs to be carried through saying, why is this so? To Sachin's point, so let's sincerely find out why. And if women are not putting their hand up, that's another story. But if women are putting their hand up, but as yet are sidelined, something is awry. observation.
Would you like to answer?
Hey,
I love that point, Cyrus, and actually come from a sector which has sort of been the lighthouse of driving this, which is tech, and particularly Silicon Valley tech. And in my personal experience, what I observed was when I started out in both consulting, tech, and even if you look at university graduates, more than 50% in ASEAN are women. But when you look at leadership positions, it's less than 15%. So, when I was younger, people often talked about the glass ceiling. But in reality, what I think is we have a broken ladder, right? We have people coming through the ranks but not being able to rise up. And there are multiple reasons why. The two main drop-off points I've seen for women from entering the workforce and getting more senior, one is parenthood and sort of going through the motherhood journey. And that's a critical drop-off point where many women would, go through that journey, decide not to come back. And there are many reasons why, and I can talk about what we've done, previously in organizations to drive that. The second, to me, has been sort of stepping up for women as expectations get higher. And sometimes it's a lack of self-belief, particularly in Asian societies, the way we've brought up women. There's almost that lack of confidence. And how do we sort of build that among women? Within tech, a couple of things that I've seen that have worked really well to drive this, right? One has been, leveling the playing field. So when I was at Twitter, we had equal paternity and maternity leaves for women, which immediately meant that gender equality cannot start at work, it actually needs to begin at home. So when you have equal maternity and paternity leaves, that means that hiring managers no longer prefer men over women when you're thinking of bringing someone on your team. You suddenly have men and women stepping out for an equal number of months. And therefore, suddenly, the conversation completely changes, right? Other programs that we had included like executive education, sponsorship programs for women. So that immediately meant that there was just a lot more appetite internally to promote and keep women. The other thing that I loved, and I've seen a lot of tech companies drive that, including Twitter, some companies here in the region such as Singtel is actually having a public commitment to what diversity means, what are their goals for diversity, and have a roadmap for that. For example, at Twitter, we were at 43% women. We had a commitment to say, we want to get to 50%. We used to have a goal. We used to have metrics around this, which were owned by leaders, and we used to report, on these, along with our annual reports, along with our sustainability reports. So that suddenly meant there was a huge amount of data transparency and accountability, and at least we had a stake on the ground to say this is not just something we're driving as a program, but really has management attention and appetite. So I think those are some of the, some easy wins that we can have within the region and would need public and private collaboration to sort of sometimes use the carrot and sometimes the stick approach to incentivize, companies to drive some of these.
Could I add, I'd just like to add to the point that Cyrus made, and this just struck me, if you look at the societies which accept women leaders, you have to look no further than which are the countries where there has been a woman president or a prime minister. And that is a significant indicator of whether that society accepts having the topmost leader of that nation to be a woman. And I'm sure you're all doing the in your head, right? Which countries do you know? Yeah. But do you know more than 5? Do you know more than 10? Right? So at least there is a beginning and a starting point that there are certain societies who do not have a problem of having the premier of that nation to be a woman. That's a starting point. And you can see there's a whole bunch of other countries, including the Old Boys Club that Cyrus mentioned, that would not accept it or would not allow it for whatever reason be. So I think the homework in ASEAN may be a little bit not as intimidating as we may think, because our societies are family-based and our societies do recognize the role women play. We have respect for women in our societies. Maybe we are in a better position than many of the other nations in the world to make a good start and to take it somewhere.
That's a very good point. You want to make a please chime in.
I really wanted to add to Cyrus' point because I love the term Old Boys Club because when I started in tech, I used to feel all alone as a woman, and it's like if you meet a woman in the lift, we used to say, "Oh my God, were you working in this building?" That was the discussion we used to have, which was really weird. But I think we've come really far in tech after 20 years. It's amazing to see that many women. Thanks to, I would call it the new age companies like Twitter that make those impact to ensure women were there. But I think what's really important to drive this more and more away from this old boys club term It's more of nations coming together and creating a mandate around your curriculum to have gender diversity inclusion topics to be driven in your curriculum, so that the children of the new age are growing up with a mentality and perspective that women are equal to you when it comes to any forms and shapes. So I hope one day that the Old Boys Club will be removed
We all hope.
with this nation's focus.
Replaced by Young Girls Club.
Yeah.
Young Girls Club. Girl Scouts. Okay, great. So I'd like to move to the next topic called overcoming barriers, and this is near and dear to my heart because my career has been groomed out of Silicon Valley. I've been in 4 other startups previous to this, and it's primarily all founded by men, and my circle of friends and allies and so forth are probably 90% men. Just sheer coincidence and by default, right, the territory. And even coming here, I've seen actually more support for women leaders and for diversity than I've seen in most of the American cities, and just coming from my own perspective because I'm American. Overcoming barriers for myself, I'm divorced. I don't have any kids. I got married because I wanted to have a family, but that didn't happen. Not just career barriers, but somehow, the societal perception of you. You've been living through that, and that kind of, it's like that weight on your shoulder trying to fulfill everyone's dreams and goals. And it took me a while to get through that. And I'm still kind of like, going through a bit of that PTSD. I know, am I good enough? Am I enough? And so not having children has been, sort of a symbolic thing in my head to understand, well, why have you been running towards a lot of startups? Because I like creation. And so one of my therapists said that the reason why you're probably not rushing to have your own child is because you want to actually do more, a bigger impact for a global perspective, and also to touch more than just 1 or 2 kids. And so that kind of helped me heal a little bit, just even sharing with you, because I want to be authentic about it. I still wake up thinking I'm not enough a lot of times, but overcoming a lot of the barriers in the career. One of my companies, they sent me to Japan. They said, why would you send a Chinese female to Japan? You're going to set her up for failure, This was over 12 years ago. And it was probably one of the most defining moments of my career, showing people that I can. And then when you actually go with an agenda and your goal, and just operate with authenticity, and I was one of the most successful turnaround stories, in Japan. I think with women, with the will, and with the dream and aspirations, we can overcome so much, not just childbearing. So this is where I leave, to Crystal. Maybe we go to you and share some of your adversities and some of the boundaries that you've broken and so forth.
So thanks Anna for sharing. I think for me, I see systemic issues as being so deeply rooted because they are rooted in cultural beliefs and values, and we have to work on that first before we can work on changing the system. I think, so first thing is, this topic can get really sensitive, and I want to highlight that this is a calling in, not a calling out, because it's easy to kind of create an othering and say, this is what we need to do, this is what you're not doing enough of, and it's a calling in, not a calling out. And it needs to start with awareness. So when we are aware of what our biases are, and we all have biases, that's the first thing. And even for me, saying like I've experienced being excluded, or I've experienced not being welcome in the room, I come with my own biases too. So probably I am, alienating or keeping someone outside of the circle that I'm not even aware of. So I think we need to start with being aware. The second thing is also creating space for acceptance of our differences, like you shared earlier, creating space for acceptance of our differences and allowing us to learn from each other and tapping into those differences. The second thing, it's actually a thought process I have around the 5 days. So awareness, acceptance, and then the next one is really like taking action. So we have these experiences where we feel excluded, and we get together and we have these conversations about what we can do next. But if we don't have an action plan, and an action plan that is kind of like a step-by-step process, it's going to be difficult for us to actually make change. And I think, to your point earlier about sincerity, the reason why a lot of people have, or a lot of organizations have difficulty setting up a DEI process or program is because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid that they might do something wrong, that they might face cancel culture, and so they don't know where to start. So having small steps that allow people to take action and move forward, that's really important. The fourth A is actually advocacy. So advocating for people, advocating for the women and the men in the room and making sure that they're part of the conversation. And the fifth A is actually accountability. So how can we actually measure how we're making a change to create more inclusive spaces as well? Yeah, and that kind of keeps us on track with what we're doing.
Great, thank you. And Chandan, this is also near and dear to your heart, right? Overcoming barriers. Okay, all
Some
right.
of it, so yeah,
Great,
we can go
great.
to anyone else.
Sita,
Okay.
Rabiatul.
Rabia.
Okay, so just building on that, so I'm sure this question is very dear to everyone's heart, including mine. I'm married with no kids either. So yeah, I understand the pressure, you see. I've been married for like 15 years. Yeah, no kids, because I feel, part of it is because I feel that if I have kids, I cannot focus on my career or my studies. So it's like a sacrifice that I have to make, because I have a passion in, let's say, in the physics, in the sciences, but I have to, give up my family. I'm glad that I have a husband that's supportive of my ambitions. But yeah, so being in the physics field, I'm always in a room full of guys. So that's common. And part of the reason why I get a PhD is because I don't want to be defined by my marital status, right? I don't want people like, oh, you're just a missus, you're a madam. They call my husband a doctor, but they call me Mrs. Yeah. So I do not accept that. Yeah. So, especially in academia, like being in physics, the kind of exclusion that I felt is, yes, they do listen to you. I mean, they don't really listen to you, they just let you speak, but they are dismissive about it. So I feel that women in this field in STEM, they have to speak louder, they have to be stronger, and then that's the barrier we have to overcome ourselves. And it all also starts with the cultural impact and how we are brought up.
Can you give me an example of how you actually spoke up and
one very good example? Okay,
stood for yourself?
For myself. So let's say I have a fact that I was just sharing, because in physics, right? It's just some scientific term that I was just saying, and everybody like, oh yeah, sure. But when my husband beside me, okay, he has a PhD too, but when he see the exact same sentence, 1 minute later, then they were like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm like, is it because it's bigger or what? I said it. First, he just emphasized it. He just amplifies it. But yeah, I have my own merits, not just his. So, but he's amazing. Yeah. So.
Have you actually stood up for yourself in any situation?
I did, but it comes off as I'm being fussy, I'm being a prima donna, I'm being a diva, I do not want to do the work. Yeah, just by saying one thing, no. Yeah, but if a guy does it, then like, oh yeah, okay, he's better off doing something more important. Yeah, so that's the difference that I see.
I have something to add to that. Thank you for sharing that, Rabia. I think also the starting point or how men and women are being judged is different. So like Sita was showing earlier. Sita was showing earlier about the biases. It could be the same behaviors for two people, right? A man could be behaving in a confident, outspoken, and grounded way, and people look to him and think, oh, that's a solid perspective, that's a leader I will look up to. But if a woman were to do the same thing, it's like, oh, she's being really demanding, she's being too forceful, or she's being commanding, and it's the exact same behavior, but because of our internal biases, known and unknown, it changes the way we look at that leader. Yeah, and I've experienced that as well. I've experienced that as in people looking at me that way, and to be honest, I've also looked at a woman leader the same way and thought, oh, she's putting the money too, so I need to keep myself in check as well. Yeah.
Would you like this? Yeah, after you. I have
So I really liked what Anna and Rabia said, because I'm probably in the same boat, right? So I'm married for 12 years and I don't have children. So you can imagine, as a born Indian in Singapore, it's in our culture embedment, to ask a question. Like every time someone meets you, like, have you had a kid? Then I go like, no, I don't think I have the intention for the next 10 years or so. That's my answer. But apart from the joke, of course, I feel exactly like how Anna feels. Like, a lot of times I'll wake up and think that maybe I'm less of myself. I don't have a child. Maybe I'm not full. I'm not a full person. I'm not complete. But to add on to Rabia, we are very complete. We're actually telling a lot of women in the world that you can wake up to your rights. You can do exactly what you want to do. I told myself that for 20 years that I want to be one of the top 10% women in ASEAN who can proudly tell any man who runs an enterprise as a CEO, I have done business in North Asia and South Asia. I can tell you exactly what is going to go right and wrong, and I have the data points, and I'm going to fix your business. And I want to be able to look into someone's eyes and say that, and say whether you want to accept the answer or not. But that took me 20 years of a marriage, a supporting husband, and no children. That's what I wanted to say.
I don't think it's just the children part, isn't it? I mean, so again, I'm not speaking.
Take the mic.
Oh, sorry. My sister's in the same boat, not me. I've been single all through, so it was okay. But again, I'm applying the same logic to my sister. Grew up in an Indian family in India, very conservative. And I think what I decipher from this chat is if you have two rock-solid parents who will handle any adversity, that's 60%, 70% of the battle won. But if the parents and the society that you grow up in get sucked into this, oh my God, why is she not married? Why is she not having children? I suspect it adds on more weight, the ones that you were all going through. So we very early decided attack is the best defense. And I've seen my sister, Jasmine Daruwala, you look her up, she's a very successful entrepreneur. She's a developer in a man-eat-man world. She's a developer, a property developer. And she would be offensive. How you say, oh my God, she's too loud and too offensive. The only way she would overcome it by being offensive, saying, that kind of. So I'm not saying everybody should become offensive, but I think stand up, and a couple of people said standing up. I think maybe if you've got the backing of the society and a couple of your very close family friends, overcoming that becomes easier, I suspect.
I wanted to say to this point on the maternity right? There's a challenge for every women professional when you reach an age where you want to start a family, and I can see that in my team. Sometimes the girls will come and say, "Well, I'm planning to maybe get married and have a kid, so I'm not going for this promotion or for this project." And you have to remind them that it takes a long time before you're gonna need to take the time off, and you're gonna take, not that long, a few weeks. That it's not gonna impact anything in the big scheme of things. So the world is changing very, very quickly, and the expectations that we had on supporting families or having kids are also changing very rapidly. When I started having kids, it was absolutely mandatory to have at least two. And any friend who had only one or no kids at all, it was so unusual. We didn't even know how to talk to them. And I'm originally from Europe, and I've been in Asia for 20 years, and I've lived in many different cultures, North America, Japan, lots of different places with very different social norms. And I can tell you that today women are considering not having kids at all, are considering having only one, adopting, the family and the composition of family and the social norms are evolving very quickly because the world is changing. This morning I was at the launch of the Singapore Institute of Directors accreditation for corporate directors, and I was surprised to see so many women. It's absolutely fantastic to see how women are now contributing to companies sitting in boards. And they are not just the token women, they are being decision makers, they are driving content, they are really asking the right questions. And the minister shared the new framework, and she mentioned the BANI framework. I don't know if you've heard about this. She mentioned that the world is evolving to be, the B is for brittle. Things are going to start to break more. You're going to see lots of weather emergencies, challenges in the infrastructure. The second one is A for anxious. We can expect people to be more worried about the future, more, linear careers are not the norm anymore. We need to change jobs. Artificial intelligence is coming to change things quickly. We need to adapt faster. That creates anxiety. The N is for non-linear. The fact that careers are non-linear, the results, the impact of the effort that we put is non-linear with the expectation of the result. And then the I is for incomprehensible. It's hard to understand all the changes that are happening around us. The technology industry is changing, has been changing very quickly in the past couple of years. We see regional headquarters moving in different directions. Things are changing very fast, right? So in this context, what does it mean for women? And how can we support women continuing to drive economic growth in ASEAN? And I think this is when we put that in the context of the social norms and the pressure that women receive to have kids or not, and whether this represents a gap sets them back. I think we need to be ready for more flexibility, to really support women in any choice that they make in the future for their bodies, for their careers, for their families, in the context of all this really changing world around us, right? And we've seen this in 15 years. I've seen this changing enormously. I hope all of you feel that the pressure is not what it was, that you're starting to have these conversations today where it's perfectly, absolutely fine to make any personal choice that you wish for your career. And I think we need to communicate that to our teams and empower the women to want to make those choices in our teams and support them when they need to.
Yeah, I think on this point, and similar to you, Meri, I have two boys, right? So I think I sometimes feel there's no winning this battle, because when you're on the other side, there's still pressure, because then suddenly there are these unconscious biases that come up, like, will she take up a promotion and move her family?
True.
And maybe they won't even consider a woman for a leadership role because they assume that probably not, or maybe she's not as ambitious when she comes back from maternity leave. I remember I had 4 months of maternity leave when I was at Twitter, and the first chance I got, which was a global conference, just after my maternity leave ended, I was raring to go. So I went for that conference, left my baby behind with my husband, and there was a lot of judgment, because it was like, here, she's a mom, and she's left her child and gone, 14 hours away, another time zone. So judgment works both ways, and unfortunately there's no winning that.
True.
I think what I fundamentally believe which can change the game is women standing up for women. We talk a lot about male allies, but I truly believe that women coming together is a force multiplier. And being able to do that both through formal and informal networks. Anna and I, for example, we're a part of this tech women, group of 40 to 50 women. We get together, share stories, be vulnerable and authentic with each other. And I think that's a beautiful way to support each other, because we're all in different journeys. But fundamentally, I think what we are trying to do is very, very similar and consistent.
That's great. I just had a comment here. Probably the reason, another reason is that probably nobody trusts the men to look after the baby. Right?
Very true.
Right?
Useless.
Yeah, men are useless in that. So I resonate with some of the things that Anna, Gayathri, and Rabia said. The need for nurturing. Nurturing is a skill that is built in, and sometimes you need to feel that you're fulfilling that nurturing skill. So the obvious answer to nurturing is having children. But there are so many other ways of doing the same nurturing thing, which is like bringing up companies, doing startups. So I can understand how that goes. But that's just about repurposing your natural skill and energy into something that gives you the same outcome, similar outcome. Anyway, the point I wanted to make here was, I'd just like to share what we do in our companies. We've been practicing this for about almost 20 years now. If you were to dissect this exclusion that Crystal just mentioned, that why do you get excluded from a job or an opportunity or career? Usually it will happen only for a few reasons. And the number one reason is you're not capable, therefore you get excluded. But if it is because of your gender that you're excluded, that's where the problem comes. So, and if you look at it in a company, you don't look at only the CEO because that's the captain of the ship. But the leadership actually is a layer of several leaders, right, who make up the board or the management team. And if you were to look at that, and this is something that we tell all our HR teams in all the companies that I work with, and including the 5 or 6 companies that I have now, is that you give the job to the best person. And with that clear direction to HR, you give the job to the best person, they will look at who's the best available person for this particular role or the job. And I'm proud to say that, in all our companies, if you look at the leadership layer, they're majority women. Because we've given a clear direction to HR that that's the criteria that we apply. Give it to the best person. It may be a man, may be a woman, but who do you have at hand right now who gets the best opportunity is the best person. So I think that kind of a philosophy, if it is practiced, you get best outcomes for your companies. Because it is very obvious that if you give it to the best person, you'll get the best outcome. Or you'll have a better chance at it, right? So I think these kind of philosophies trickle down. If you practice it, then the people who work for you will practice it wherever else they go, etc. So we have to start somewhere with the right mindset and giving the right incentives to make the right choice. So I just wanted to share that. I think that's probably one thing that I take away, that maybe more companies should be doing things like this. Thank you.
Absolutely. I love the comment that Meri made also about the Bani word adaptability. I think women are so equipped to adapt to any situation. I think the world would be in a better place when women are now, fixing and all the breakage, you were talking about. So I want to move into a conversation around education and empowerment, because we have, passionate souls here in academia as well. In the US now, in most of the STEM faculties, there are more females graduating with computer science, computer engineering degrees, and STEM degrees. And this is mind-blowing. It's such a revelation and very positive for the future. And how do we actually diversify STEM roles and whatnot. So have you guys been seeing this happening in other territories? Is this a movement that's also changing with other countries, especially in ASEAN, knowing that, there's still some, I would say, impoverished sectors that do not have accessibility to education for females. And so how would you effectively, help or contribute to that? And what's your narrative? Maybe start with the academic.
Thank you. Yes, I've always had a corporate career, but I love teaching. I think it's a wonderful way to keep learning and to give back. And particularly in ASEAN, we have reached gender parity in primary, secondary schools, and we see almost parity when it comes to technical fields of women. They do graduate with better grades. Yeah. So how is it that they are not progressing in the careers at the same speed as men? So it's not just that we have the equality, we're getting there in most countries at different speeds, but we are getting there. But why is it that there are different speeds in progression? Part of that can be social norms. It can be that expectations out of family relationships. In certain countries, people get married at a younger age, and they are expected to have kids at a certain age, take care of parents, and so on and so forth. But the key challenge is one of them is self-confidence. When men put their hand up for a role, they might have half of the skills, and women still apologize for missing one. I've had so many, I've built teams all over Asia when it comes to data governance, analytics, and you interview data scientists that come with, from the same universities with very similar backgrounds and education. And women are just not putting themselves out there. They still apologize for not knowing something, and the men are just asking for more, very aggressive. So culturally, we need to train not just in skills, but also in the ability to advocate for yourself, to really support each other. And I have a few stories. For example, we hired 3 fresh grads that they came out all from different Asian backgrounds. They all had studied, they graduated from the US, fantastic talent, 2 women and 1 man. Turns out that we didn't realize they all went through the same process. The man actually went to HR and asked for more. He said, well, I'm planning to get married next year and want to support my wife. HR gave them more, a bit more. We had, the hiring leader didn't realize that right away. So the following year, when we were looking at bonuses and promotions, I said, no, we're going to make sure that the women get what they should have taken, because the 3 of them were at the same level, doing exactly the same job, and they are exactly qualified in the same way. And I had to go and talk to the man and say, look, we're not wait 1 more year for your promotion because this is what happened, and we want to be fair. And you will all get what you deserve, as you progress with the company. And he said, yeah, that's fine. But why did it happen in the first place, right? How do we still allow in organizations that we are having these different speeds at which we treat men and women? And I think part of it could be that we also need to learn soft skills in school, not just technology, the data, the analytics, coding. That's absolutely fine, and women are excelling at that. I think that's absolutely wonderful. But we need to really help them lead as well. And my background, I did both sides. I did the technical side with the PhD, and then I did the leadership with an MBA. Perhaps education needs to be more blended when it comes to driving this kind of behaviors.
I think females were taught to have manners. And men are just going there to break arms and legs when they're, and so I think it's a systemic problem to be kind and soft and passive. Yeah, not me. But I'm kind. All right. Sita, would you like to comment on the education aspect of it, or Poe? Poe just dropped off, I think. Okay. Unmute. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Hi, everyone. In terms of the education, I think I always grow up with the educations that I need to be the supporter, because I'm originally from Burma, and we're very conservative, society. So every person that I see around, my moms and everybody around, they're all a supporter. And you speaking up to some sort of thing, and you having opinion, I grew up with this as not attractive as a woman. So having a great educations, or having a great cultures around the women in ASEAN region is very important when they're growing up, because for this education or those cultures, when I realized when I becoming a businesswoman, it's not a perfect trait to become a businesswoman. If you want to be a successful businesswoman, you need to have opinion, need to be stick to it, and you have to have the confidence to speak up to it. So for me, I struggle a lot from my mom education, my culture's education to become businesswoman, because first I struggle a lot with my confidence. The second thing is I don't know the first time is if I'm doing the right thing, or am I just, doing against what my culture is. So I think to start off with in the ASEAN region for women entrepreneur is just to start off in the household to say, well, you need to speak up about your opinion. You need to be stand by yourself. You don't need to be, depending on someone to get to pay your bills. And just to start off with that basic education, then in the future they can become confident about to speaking up about your opinions and standing up for their belief. I think that is for me is struggling is not only the textbook that you learn from thing, just having the confidence to talk about your opinion. It's starting from your household. I think household education for me is very important for any kids growing up. That's all I want to put in.
Great, thank you. Sita, do you have any comments? No, okay, great. So let's move on to allies. We have a few men in here. I would love to understand how you in your position have promoted and really push the boundaries for women and actually giving them an opportunity. What does ally mean to you? Like, because we keep on saying that, you know, we need men on our side, but there's so much more to that.
Sure. I think one of the reasons why I'm here is because I've always been the anti-male campaigns, and that's probably because I've seen so much of it. Again, like I said, it started off when we were teenagers and my sister was growing up and she was ostracized for being married twice and divorced twice, unacceptable in most cultures, even now. Growing to Hong Kong, where you have a certain different sort of a conservative Chinese breed. But I think to the earlier point in here, an ally, I want you all to look at a case study in Thailand. You get the aggression and standing up for yourself. You see the alliances that you've been talking about. I get that sort of, hey, Cyrus, don't tell me that, okay, I did better. That subtle, feminine, yet aggressive tone saying, I did better, I owe that. It may almost be a global case study on why, whether it's in government, they're very, very high up. Whether it's in banking, my world, and equity markets and private equity, they're very high up. Whether it's in SME businesses, they're very high up. Whether they are single, whether they are married, whether they are bisexual, gay, it does not matter, they are very high up. So what in Thailand drives this equality and putting the women way ahead? Alliances. And this is where, this alliance or this ecosystem, the women in tech, that's an alliance. And you ally with people. You're not male bashing, but that's an alliance. The reprimanding someone for doing a better job or not accepting, that's an alliance. But of course, it has to have that sort of level of support from a senior person, from a CEO, from an MD, from your dad, from your uncles. If they accept, that's an alliance. And they will promote it and they will stand up and say, what rubbish. She did a much better job. Why is it that you applauded the husband and not the wife? That's an alliance. Every small thing is an alliance. So I think that at that occasion, when you have that ally with you, 10 people are sold, the corresponding 20 people are sold, the corresponding village or town is sold, and so on and so forth. And of course, we're practicing that in Blackstone. The senior most person, not just a HR ally. So I think alliances and allies mean different things to different people, but that unwavering commitment to see it through, I think that's the definition of a very strong ally.
Could I add a bit here? Okay. So, this is an important angle to look at, and I'd like to go back a little bit and dissect it a bit, right? It's just sharing some thoughts, and feel free to agree or disagree, right? If you look at 5,000 years ago, how did humans exist? They were in small communities, and they were defined by roles such as hunter, gatherer, nurturer, protector, and in a way, men and women adjusted to those roles. Who would be hunter and gatherer, who would be, and if you look at the Amazon, if you look at other parts of the world, there were different genders doing the same thing, right? And then as we progressed and the advent of or the evolution of civilization came, is when it started creating these issues about, what gender should do which role, etc. And this whole idea of exclusion, and it's a factor of civilization being evolving. And if you look at industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, they were heavily geared towards men doing many of the jobs because those industries required those kind of skills. and the women would do a different role within that society that was being enveloped around them. But now suddenly when you're in Industry 4.0, there's a much more opportunity for fair awarding of work opportunities to all genders. And I think we are living in a time where this is now possible to do. And this allies issue about how do you build allies, because this has been going on for 5,000 years, right? Or maybe more. And we are seeing that the need for allies is to find support and find people who are accepting of this evolution and allowing evolution to take place. Because we are facing, 2 generations ago, or your parents' generation treated the whole issue very differently. We are treating it in a different way. Our kids are going to treat it in a totally different way. So there's an evolution of all of this coming through time. And the key here is forming allies is a way to get through these generational differences so you can progress to the next step. So 100 years from now, what would this topic be all about? You can think it won't be the same as it is today. It's progressing in a direction which is also because of how we live as a society. Right? So I feel that this is an important thing that we should look within our own families, within our own societies, of how are we educating the children? How are young boys being brought up? Right? If they're being brought up by the mother, then there is a good opportunity for the mothers to actually instill some good values in them. If they're being brought up by the father, then there will be other opportunities of instillment of values to them. So I think this education and providing that kind of wholesome family education will play an important role, because the roles of these genders are also changing. Right? It's not the same role we looked at 100 years ago or 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago. This whole equation is, it's a goalpost that's moving. So I think it's a very interesting time that we can influence this process. If we understand what are the issues and what do we need to do collectively as a society, we can influence what happens in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I think it's a great opportunity for us to head in the right direction.
I love this point because I think it leads into the conversation that we had before, which is if these boys are not just raised by the father or the mother, by both equally, then you have both parents contributing as partners equally, raising boys and girls that live in equality, right? We know that it's very hard to do. But just going back to the point on allies, often we talk about mentors, whether women have mentors, who's been your sponsor, whether you had this group of people who were cheering you up along your journey, right? And I think we don't have that many. There are not that many still champions, sponsors, supporters, men who are really there to help you and to see you succeed. And I think women, we need to not just put that in somebody else's responsibility. We need to really designate our own board of supporters, advisors, mentors, and then bring these people into our lives. Our friend Alisa also mentioned this concept in her book, and I think it's a fascinating point on having a group of people who are your supporters, who can really be your allies, your mentors, your coaches, men and women in general, but really surrounding you by people who are going to cheer you up and be happy for your success.
Thank you for that. I wanted to add on as well that I don't think allyship is an identity. I think it's a choice, it's an active choice. And it's also a really big ask, because allyship is basically someone who is coming from a place of privilege or advantage, helping someone who has less of an advantage. So it takes a lot to be an ally. You have to be really humble and recognize that you're coming from that space of privilege. And you have to be accountable, to be willing to lift up other people so that they have space in the room as well. And I think, to your point earlier as well about influence, our superpower in this room is that the circles of influence we have go way beyond our spaces at work. It is the parent-teacher group that we are part of in school. It is the volunteer groups that we are part of. It is, the membership clubs that we are in. There are so many circles of influence where we can create ripple effects. And I think when we think about, being allies, it starts with those different spaces. And if we can start from that one circle, that kind of spreads out. Yeah. So I think also being aware of where our circles of influence are, that's an opportunity to be an ally.
No, I think pretty much echoing everyone's points. I think often when we think of male allies, we think of senior people in senior positions. I often think allyship begins at home. Actually choosing the right partner and having that as your right male ally can do wonders for your career and for your professional growth. I think again, also thinking through peers as allies as well, and being able to use that as you grow in your career. We often think of like very senior people driving that growth. It's often people, as your board of advisors, as you talked about with Elisa's book, right? And being able to build that through a combination of people, and equally bringing together women and men, as well as not driving the ownership towards someone else, but really holding it within ourselves. We, ultimately we are accountable for how far we can take our careers. People can only support us through that. So being always able to make sure that we are the captain of our own ships and being able to drive that, I think is important.
That's beautiful. Speaking of that, my dad has been the best, I would say, mentor, ally. Yeah, he had 2 girls, so we're not afraid to speak up. In fact, my sister's, she's definitely not the shy type either. Can any of you share stories, as well as from the remote side, of a specific situation that you actually had a male ally that really helped you out in the situation?
So I can't say for everyone, but maybe I can just say for myself in a specific situation. Well, the amount of diversity that you see in Singapore today in 2024 was really different 20 years ago. Maybe I want to start with that. And it's really tough to be part of the minority in Singapore, which not many people would talk about. It's very different when you come from very large countries, because your perspective of thought process is very different when it comes to communities, growth and perspectives, versus someone who's born in Singapore, which is pretty much, I would call it like a Disneyland, that's overly efficient with just 5 million population. And we have a subtle way of the majority overtaking every other outcomes. And that was just a natural because of the way we designed the country. And I think it was really hard for me to crack the corporate code to get into a leadership position. That's irregardless of the measurement of my capacity, of whether I'm being capable or whether I'm able to demonstrate my abilities and my achievements to bring the organization to the next extent, right? And I think I'm very, very lucky in my 20 years that I've met 3 solid male allies who've been with me till today, despite them being retired, some of them still being in the corporate, some left the corporates, became billionaire startups, who are still coaching me and mentoring me and actually promoted me indirectly, being my sponsor and my ally and my backbone every other day of my life. So they do message me every week and go like, how did the week go? What exactly happened? And it's very hard to meet male allies of such extent. So I think that sometimes you get lucky, you meet people along your career, and sometimes you don't. But to echo to Chandan, I think one of the best things that's happened is probably my husband is a great example of someone who really doesn't care what people got to say. So when people tell him, oh, your wife is away 3 weeks in a month, what do you do? He said, that's kind of rather fun. I have the whole house to myself. When she comes back, we go for an amazing meal. And I'm actually waiting to retire, he said, so that she works harder. This is great. Like, why is that anything different? So you need to start with home. And then, your mind gets better and better with what allies actually mean to you. So that's just a little bit about myself.
Any other stories?
Maybe me.
Okay.
Building on that, I mentioned, right? Okay, my husband is, I would say, my biggest ally. We studied together. I married very young. We studied together. He's my biggest cheerleader. He even took I wouldn't say he supported my ambition and even supported my decision to study overseas while he's here in Singapore. Although I got cut off from my family for wanting to study overseas, and they were like, just study in Singapore, But he said, no, this is something that she wants to do, and he stood up for me and he said, go. I'm sure, it wasn't easy for him to be alone here, I'm sure, but he said, yes, pursue your dream, come back. Be a confident lady and pursue whatever you want. So he's my biggest ally. It comes from family, right? He's my family. But in terms of career-wise, I would say our new president, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, I would say he's the one person I feel that the first person I met out of school that took me seriously. As a, he's very tall and, his stature. But I'm just a small girl, then he just he believed in me. He helped me network. He teaches me how to network. And that's how I get to be a bit more confident, I would say. Yeah. I struggle with confidence too. I guess that's a common factor among all us girls. So I guess it's something we should all work on, support each other, and then eventually I'm sure all of us can overcome that.
Yeah. I agree about Tharman. Solid champion.
I think we're sharing supporters. I think my husband is my first supporter, and sometimes I would say, well, thank you for supporting me on these, and he always replies, did I have a choice?
Yeah, correct.
And but I've had in the corporate world strong supporters that were absolutely fantastic in times of very tough political changes. And sometimes you see people just closing around you and saying, well, we're going to protect what you're doing. And in those moments, I really felt grateful. I felt grateful that they could see the quality of the work that was coming out of the team, that they were ready to really support it. And I will always be grateful to them. I think that was in a couple of situations where I really felt privileged to be really working with people of such amazing quality. So I think these people, we need to treasure them. We need to really stay in their lives, stay connected, and even years later, I make sure that I send them, holiday cards, that I ping them from time to time and say happy birthday, and I think they're just amazing.
Yes, I'm lucky to have had a really great manager at my time at Google. And when I was working there, he encouraged me to take on projects that I thought were too big for me. He kind of put me in front of leadership meetings and said, you can do this, I will support you, this is how we're going to kind of prep you or prepare you for this conversation. And the thing is, we both left the organization now and he still keeps in touch with me. And I think to your point, allies are not people who are just with you for a certain season of your career. They are people who stick around with you and want you to succeed, even if it doesn't directly benefit them. I think that says a lot about an ally and a person. So I'm lucky to have met people like that in my life.
Thank you. Any other sharing, Sita or Pro?
No, I don't have actually a particular story about a male ally. I'm always inspired to hear about all of your experiences, to learn from you, and also to see again the importance of allyship and the platforms that we need to create so that allyship not only pans out in silence or in secret, but is also kind of shown, and we have role models and the recognition for these allies, both male and female, that we can share more widely. Again, very often we do feel that women in particular lack the kind of inspiration to look for. If you can see it, you can be it, basically. So that kind of thing has been very exciting for me to listen to all of you. But I've found also at the same time very often very telling that we always kind of seem to circle back to the issue of family or the issue of husbands, for better and for worse. And again, I'm also one of those who would say, yes, how come whenever we are discussing this, we always discuss who has a husband, who does not have a husband, who has children, who does not have children, why and why not? Which speaks again to what I said at the very beginning, for better and for worse. No? I'm also appreciative of husbands and all of that. No? And it speaks to the biases we always face and the burdens that we still have to tackle with either which way. Sometimes women, particularly in this part of the world, I'm half German, half Indonesian. So particularly here in Indonesia, we're faced much more perhaps with these kinds of more outdated traditional notions. We just seem to cannot win. The taxi driver is asking you why you have children, why you not have children, and you have to somehow always justify yourself and make up a story or be honest. But either which way, it seems to be a discussion that we don't necessarily have when it comes to male leadership or men advancing within society, within the economy, within in politics. There are a lot of, I think, behavioral issues that we need to tackle that will be very difficult to do, and we need more time for that. What I find perhaps we could also look at is besides the behavioral issues, what are maybe structural or systemic issues we face as women want to advance their careers or their businesses. And that brings me back again to the policy side. We haven't touched on that, but maybe we can also look at the barriers. So not just the biases and the burdens women face, but also the barriers concretely that would need to be tackled through regulatory policies in different ways. Again, taking the example of childcare, I work in competition policy. In other countries in the world, there have been investigations to analyze the market and to see whether support schemes for childcare, elderly care are out there, are available, are affordable for women, so they can actually free up time and energy to do what they want to do in their business world. I feel this kind of discussion also to bring in policies, maybe also novel or niche policies like competition policy that can instill or infuse competition in markets like childcare services. This kind of discussion we also might want to have in ASEAN. It's still not yet something that's very much reflected. We do look at barriers. Again, many of you mentioned level playing field. So how do we also make sure that, let's say, exclusive dealing, cartel conduct, that sort of thing is not evident and accepted in the markets that women-owned, women entrepreneurs, women-owned businesses would want to branch out into. Another policy field that I feel sometimes we don't really look into it too much. So maybe we would want to also kind of look at some of these policy issues that are a little bit more different from our usual discussions and see how that could be linked or synced with our gender-related women empowerment discussion. That's just some food for thought from my side. I think there's also one point perhaps on leadership where composition or more diverse composition of managerial boards and companies can lead, as somebody has said, to greater profitability, but also to greater integrity, setting companies up for success, for competitiveness of the overall economy. Again, one topic of competition policy that is sometimes perhaps under-reflected or not quite seen yet when we talk about gender, women, leadership in ASEAN. So yeah, some notes from my side perhaps. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
You go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thanks.
You know, I had a I had a question which I just want to pose to all of you, probably to just keep up. Have you ever faced gender discrimination or exclusion from other women? Does that happen as well?
All the time.
Sure.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. So is that also
Even more fiercely,
Yes.
because I think that's also part of this whole discussion,
Yes.
isn't it?
Even
Like it's
more
not
fiercely.
only from the other gender, but from your own gender. It's also gender.
It's the biggest, it's probably a bigger problem.
Maybe you want to share something?
I think it's even more fierce amongst women.
We used to call it the queen bee effect.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, every time another bee tries to be the queen bee kills it, right? And that was a word I learned very early in my corporate career about how, you know, what happens is it's so difficult to reach the top, and when you do reach the top as a woman, you're celebrated, you're one of the few ones. So therefore, sometimes you see examples of people who may not pay it back or may not pay it forward enough. But then you equally see examples of people doing incredible work to be strong champions and allies. So I wouldn't want to say, I think we've all faced both sorts of women, and I think everyone chooses their tribe and their alliances based on how you are. So I think, but it is common. But I hope that given all these conversations that we're having, that it's changing, because we are seeing a lot of both formal and informal women getting together and being able to sort of, you know, because we've realized that we cannot fight this, if you were to say, battle alone.
Yeah.
We need other women around us.
But to your point, I've been just very fortunate. I've never had a male boss. All my bosses, all my seniors were always women. From day one until now at the age of 55, my boss is a woman. And the competition of women bringing down women, my God, I've seen it up close. I mean, there's this fight for me to be on her side and not her side. I don't know why. it may be an inherent competitive sort of a DNA that they want to outshine the others. And I've never seen a man, at least in my entire career, not give a position to a woman because she's a woman. But I've seen women decline women. I don't know why. Maybe a competitive thing.
It's probably a simple answer because of the demand supply thing. There are only that many positions, so the competition is much more fierce compared to the number of.
No, but in
opportunities.
HSBC, I mean, when I'm 20 and my boss is 50, and she took me aside saying, "You're in my team, you gotta stick for me, not for her, the other competitor."
Making allies.
Yeah. So I learned at an early age. This happens.
I think I've seen all kinds of fights, and I always felt that it was fair play as long as there was no discrimination because of gender, sexual orientation, religion, race, and so on. As long as we fight, and every business will have different rules of the game, right? So banking probably a little bit different from entrepreneurship and different from others. But as long as the comment or the decision is not directed at me just because I'm a woman or because I'm, any label that you want to apply, I think it's absolutely fair. Sometimes I ask people, would you ask me the same question if I was a man? No?
True.
Fine. Then do you ask men if they have kids and how many kids? No, then why are you asking me?
Mm.
As long as we play a level field, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then corporate cultures are also sometimes something that we need to also improve on. Make sure that people are treated fairly, and that means different things for different organizations.
Well, I think I had a real life experience which was quite mind blowing. I met this fantastic woman leader, and I thought that oh, she's great, and so while I was young and I was growing up in technology, I thought, oh, she's amazing. She rose herself, she did really well, and so there was this fantastic career opportunity, and I decided to bid for the role. So since it was not a young role, it takes you 12 to 15 interviews before you get across to become an APAC leader. So I thought, oh wow, working under these women, I'm going to learn a very different set of skill set because it's probably going to be very diverse versus all the male leaders that I've been working for in tech all my life, and I want to do that for myself. And she was pretty amazing in the 15 interviews. That was just real life incident. She even invited me to her place, we had lunches, we had drinks, whatever. So we got to the final interview, and it was between me and this one other guy who was at the final running. And I knew for sure that I had the caliber to cut for the role, and I had the right sponsors too at that point in time. And I didn't get the role. And I didn't understand why I didn't get the role. She didn't, after spending so much time with me, I would expect someone to tell me, when I come back to you, if you can tell me why, I would improve for myself, and that would be really good feedback. I like constructive feedback for growth. Good criticisms are always welcome, right? And I want to be friends for a long time. She never came back to me. She never said why. She never gave me constructive criticism ever. And I only learned it after many years later from a sponsor that she actually felt that you will be a growing threat to her in bidding for her next role, which she did not want to. And I thought, well, that was funny. She could have told me. We could have part ways as handshake and friends, But that's very sad as women that I want to avoid. Like I always tell women leaders when I meet them, or anyone who aspires to be a women leader, that you should never have that concept in your mind. We should always try to come together and see how your skill set and my skill set is going to make another woman better in the world. It should never be bringing another woman down. So that's.
But easier said than done. You say mentors and allies. As a mentor, most of the mentees, Sneha, who's a married woman but living alone in Dubai, the group CIO for Standard Chartered. These are very close people, and they bounce off, and the first thing they say is, "Sai, I can't stand this she's dragging me down and she's this, and they're talking about another female colleague. And as a mentor, I'm like, well, there must be, and again, it's inevitably this threat that you pose to each other. I don't know if it's a genetic thing because
It's limited number of opportunities.
yeah, but
There
yeah,
is
I
that
guess
more.
yeah, but
If you have
all
more
things
opportunity,
being
then
equal,
there is room for everyone.
I see. So, for example, as a male, I don't see men bringing down a man because he's going to take my. In fact, in HSBC, every person walked into my office saying, "I want your role, I want your job," and I'm like, but it wasn't because I was a man or a woman. But I see that. So I don't have the answer to that. But yeah, I do see it every day in the working world. Hey.
Great stories, thank you. One story I would like to share, possibly from a psychology lens, because let's say we start from the homes, from parenting and whatnot, from all the learnings that we carry with us through life, and then all of a sudden we bring this to work. And if you surround yourself with, in the conference room with your colleagues, and everyone comes from a different background, different way of looking at life, right? And then they carry also trauma, whatever trauma definition we want to impose. But we're now actually trying to solve it with psychology. And it's so hard to, because we don't know what's behind the veil. We don't know what's at home, what's coming, because every time we speak, I'm now using more and more therapeutic terms and more psychological terms that I'm learning also from, development, leadership grooming, or whatever, team building. Everything comes back to psychology and insecurity and self-awareness, as Crystal was saying. And so when we do, combat some of these differences in the workplace, it goes back to carrying that insecurity, and then you're having to deal with that insecurity, whether insecurity is racism or, not enough, because they're projecting their hurt onto others. And so that's the primary issue that I'm trying to solve in the workplace as well, is to bring psychology to help, we know that there's certain hurt that you're bringing, but it can't be, it has to stop right there. But how do we help you manage that hurt? Because it's the same, nobody talks about it. So then if you're suppressed and now it's raising, so this whole gender issue, I treat psychology as a gray line. It has no race, creed, or we're all flawed beings, and then how do we fix it? So it's a very deeper, much deeper conversation. But I do, if I have a chance to hire a psychologist in my organization as my head of HR, I would, like the Billions, Wendy and Billions, that show. I would like them to sit down. That would be the office hours. Yeah, exactly. Which I did actually, when we were going through COVID, we did have a Wendy in our organization that literally only develops through psychology with our team, because it was so crucial for us to do that.
I have a little comment to add. It's actually a phrase I want to share with the group. So I think when we make choices that are like a zero-sum game, from a zero-sum game lens, it's because we're operating from the land of lack. I like to call it the land of lack, because we feel like if I win, they lose, if they win, I lose. But if we operate from the land of abundance, we realize that we are force multipliers, we can share, we can create, we can co-create, and we'll do that through collaboration. So stepping out of land of lack into the land of abundance. We need to stick our flag in that space.
That's what our forum is, right? Economic growth, driving economic growth. I think we have to get to that. How do we collectively, as allies, us and you individually, drive economic growth
Great.
and opportunity?
So let's talk about tech. We have a few men and female tech leaders here. How does tech, emerging technology as well, because now AI is just moving in breakneck speed, and I think it's scaring so many people out of their roles, and actually it's already sunsetting and replacing roles as we speak. How can we, with the speed of innovation and the adoption in STEM and everything else that we talked about earlier, how can emerging technologies be harnessed to support and amplify the role of women impact, and how do we actually share that kind of leadership development across the board, and how does tech play in that role?
Yes, this is my favorite question. I think when it comes to new and emerging technologies, we have the opportunity to bring women on board. And particularly in this part of the world, we can innovate solutions that can really bring up equality and that create more participation. Think of all the products that can be developed not just for men or on the size of men or particularly for men's problem, which is anything that you can imagine, from medical devices to anything. And this is the joke, if men had to suffer through mammograms, they would have invented a better way of assessing for breast cancer a long time ago. So there are lots of opportunities for women, particularly there are some initiatives on training women to help train new AI models. If we could feed the AI models of the future data that takes into account women, that it's not an unbalanced scale when it comes to making the outputs, then we do have an opportunity to promote a lot of equality. And when women are in a position to bring economic advancement to the societies, they just not enrich themselves, they enrich their whole communities, their families, and their whole ecosystem. So it's something that's been proven, and we do have an opportunity to first train them, but allowing them not just equality, but also inclusion, giving them the ability to make decisions, to really participate at senior level on how these new products, these new solutions, and these new investments have to be in for society.
Just adding on to what? Oh, sorry.
If I can just a comment here about since we talked about technologies and AI. So if you look at it, human endeavor always overcomes anything new that's thrown to them. If you really look at within our lifespans, right, when you were allowed to take a calculator to your class, when you were not allowed at one point in time, then came the computers. And we've had this scare about, it'll take away our jobs, And we've had that even, when they first had motor cars, there was a bunch of people who were, taking horse carriages, they'll take away our jobs. So we've always faced this. And humans always come up ahead because now they got one more great tool under their belt. So I think this is a job transformation problem and a career transformation problem, but it's not a problem going forward because new jobs will be created because now AI takes over mundane things which you don't need to do.
True.
Therefore, you can focus on the next big thing that is going to be even more advancement for humans collectively. So I think, we are caught up in that cusp of, we are right now got a new technology and we are panicking the same way so many people did 20 years ago and 50 years ago and 100 years ago. I don't even see it as a problem. We just have to understand it and figure out what are the opportunities. And actually, these opportunities may be much more gender equal, right? Yeah. There may be a lot more such opportunity come up thanks to having AI which has disrupted things as we know.
True.
So I think this is a good thing. For example, if radiologists don't need to have that much time taken because AI helps them to do diagnosis and compare results across, they have more time on their hands to do other things. So efficiency gets built up and opportunities get built up. So I think these kind of disruptions are a necessity and they'll only make life better for everyone.
Yeah, he mentioned the next big thing, and we were all at a forum just yesterday. It's called the next big thing. And to Mari's point, what I was saying is that we have, as IBC, enough data to provide and endorse that majority of the risk-adverse algorithms are female-led. Majority of the workflows, in technology speak, it's called workflows. In life sciences and cell research, stem cell research are women-led. So, and that's all being made possible by AI because again, the huge compute power in AI, open systems, SUSE Linux and what have you, all of that is being driven by women. Now it's a matter of you shining more. So I think if driving eco-growth and driving economic growth, we should take this to the masses. And we as a group, as the ASEAN Economic Forum, if we can champion, we're doing financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is nothing but using technology, identifying swaths of female and entrepreneurs that do need the capital, matching that against somebody like a Blackstone or a B Capital, going and facilitating that, and all of that can be automated. And there are examples coming out of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, where women are risk adverse and hence doing much better with AI and with technology and even in banking. So yeah, I think technology is going to nullify that playing field, and when it equals it out, women will shine brighter. We just have to find that fire quickly.
This is, by the way, this is a very important point that you just made. When a woman goes to a bank to ask for a loan for their business, the models that assess the risk are completely biased. So it's very important that now these models are being worked, adapted and equalized, so women actually have access so they can finance their business, they can grow their communities and they can expand. So this is extremely interesting. Financial inclusion is one of the areas that it's going to be supported by the new technology development, and it will hopefully promote a lot of access to growth across communities.
It is, and that train has left the platform. I mean, there are financial inclusion programs, and again, we are launching one ourselves. It is AI-based decisions, so there are no biases built in. And we call it ethical AI. That's again harnessing the technology, putting in a regulatory framework saying, that was a wrong assumption. Don't build assumptions. Look at the credit score. And women are a lot, there's never been a woman SME default. How about that to start with? And there's lots and lots of fraud committed by men. Build that bias in so that women get more loans. So that is already in the way, and that's already going to come right through. And that's going to make a lot of scamsters, sit up and say, wow, why don't we lend more to women? That's real empowerment using technology. Yeah.
The last few years, one of the challenging moments we all lived with was COVID. But one of the beautiful things that came out of, something like that was the fact that remote work became so much more open as concepts. And everyone invested in remote work technology, collaboration tools, etc., right? From people who'd never used, and industries who'd never used Zoom before. And to me, that was an incredible moment because we are finally able to have women who may not have access, who may not live in a Jakarta or a Singapore or some of the capital cities, who may be in remote locations, underrepresented voices, finally have some sort of a chance to actually work for large national organizations, right? So what we've seen is that technologies can help leapfrog some of these movements. We've seen a linear growth, and I really am hoping, again, to what all of you were talking about AI as well, right, that it can be a force for good if used the right way. One of the examples of AI that we've been trying to leverage, for example, is around blind screening. Now, blind screening applies both to candidates that you're hiring, because typically if a recruiter, especially a male, is sitting and reviewing, resumes, you have a higher likelihood, for example, of a man being chosen versus a woman or a person of a certain ethnic or a race being selected for the next round versus a AI model, which again does not have those biases. Similarly, from a funding perspective, if you currently look at the startup ecosystem, only 2.2% of venture capital funding goes to women entrepreneurs. Now, as venture capital firms again start using, and we're all trying to build these out using tools for sourcing, of investments and looking at that, I truly believe that the more unbiased our models can be, it can actually democratize access to so much of the funding and opportunities. That was perfect background.
Okay, let's bring it on.
I have something to say.
It was so good, you better applaud.
Well, for me, I work with AI every day. Okay, so I feel that AI is supposed to help you, like what everyone mentioned, right? It's not supposed to replace you, it's supposed to help you. So from I do research, right? So my research is basically, a lot of it is focused on femtech. So like you say, men would invent mammogram better, right? If they have to graduate. So my lab is trying to build a better experience, how we can do mammograms. Less invasive. So I feel that femtech, or like especially in healthcare, medical technology, especially focused on female. I mean, we are complex. We have a lot of
Being
system. Even physically, internally, we are very complex. So if we can make technologies or like invent technologies that can, aid in our health care, especially focused on women, there's a lot that can drive economic growth, especially using AI, because AI, like a project I'm currently working on, is basically trying to use AI, trying to detect or not detect, like maybe observe fetal growth from home. So females, they don't need to go to their gynae like every month or what. So it gives them a peace of mind that their babies are growing well. So it's using AI to help females with their emotional needs and also their health. So I think that's really useful way to use technology and AI.
Yeah, just adding on to Rabia's point, the world's best oncology output was a drug called Herceptin, which has become the go-to drug for all breast cancer-related activities. I'm using it myself for my gastric cancer. That was developed by a German scientist, a female German scientist, and now every oncologist knows it, uses it, swears by it. So again, that is becoming mainstream, and of course such complex cellular level deciphering is only done by a very large swath of data being analyzed by a generative AI machine learning out of Munich. So yeah, there are enough examples there where technology is paving, it's leveling the field. Now where we will see most benefit is this unbiased ethical AI giving you an equal opportunity, whether it's recruitment, whether it's in funding, whether it's in jobs, because nobody has to see it, you're just given that. And that takes away racial biases.
Exactly.
We don't talk much about it, but Asia is rife with racial biases. If you're black, brown, yellow, green, whatever your color, that decides loans, no more than AI. So,
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, the models are being built.
Yeah. Well, Singapore has been the promoter of ethical AI standards for a very long time. Founder of the FIT model, proposed at the Adawiah Forum, and it's been adopted in most countries as the default ethical standard. And in fact, the Singapore Computer Society is now relaunching the book of work, which is the application of the use cases, and I think the new round is going to come with particularly industry applications that are really exciting to see. I think it's fascinating to see how sometimes AI gets applied too much. It's not the right tool for every single problem, but it's evolved to a point where the outcomes are now absolutely exciting. There's a lot of opportunity and in ASEAN to drive more economic value, and I think it will drive more inclusion as well. I think there's an opportunity for women to really drive a lot of the ethical decisions. A lot of the implementation of AI still requires human in the loop, so that the final decision is made out of somebody who understands the problem, the industry, the use case, and the technology. And I think women are particularly well positioned for these kind of roles. And I've seen this with data scientists as well. So hopefully there's a whole new set of opportunities for research, for startups, and for all kinds of areas to evolve and drive more equality in ASEAN.
That's great. So we have only a few minutes to wrap up, and I'm just going to ask anyone who wants to volunteer, so it's not mandatory. We have just 5 minutes, I was told. Okay, so obviously after all of this talk, we have to take something back to an actionable next step in terms of making progress. But before we do that, if you could implement one change tomorrow that would significantly advance gender inclusion in ASEAN, what would that be?
Maybe I'll get the ball rolling. I think it always starts with yourself, because if you make that impact, I think most women would feel that they have what it takes to make that impact. There's one thing that I decided this year, that I would train myself on board readiness. And I think that when I look at other regions, specifically the Nordic countries, how they've mandated quotas on women leaders being part of the boards, which kind of rose 40% of board leaderships run by women. And I had this thought in my mind, why was that not happening in ASEAN? We are a diverse set of nations, and we should have the same level of representation for women. So I think I want to encourage more women, especially in the STEM industry, so that it helps other industries to strive and leverage that engine to get into board readiness. Whether or not you're going to become a board director one day, you should have the skill sets and capabilities being driven at all times. So I think that's one way to look at it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, I'll go. I think the one thing that we should do, which will make a big difference for ASEAN, is to tell the stories better. So I come from a media background, right? So I'm a storyteller at heart. We should be able to tell these stories of where the advantages lie and where are the benefits and the outcomes, so that becomes a way to drive for change, as well as to encourage people that there are good reasons to be more gender inclusive. So the lack of storytelling is actually one of the problems. If we can create storytelling in a better way, media gets together. We are all storytellers in our own way, because in a year you'll meet 100 people, right? Can we tell the same stories in a convincing way that will create a kind of a ripple effect? Would be a great start.
That's beautiful. Love that.
I think I'm a huge fan of, as an ex-consultant, huge fan of measurement, and I feel like if something doesn't get measured, it doesn't get improved.
I agree.
So I would love to see some sort of policies, as we are seeing in climate, so much action around measurement of DEI goals, particularly for large public enterprises. We see that in the US more and more, would love to see more in the region, and I truly believe there are so many good companies doing incredible work, and through that DEI reporting, through accountability and goals, and sharing that transparently, I think we can make a huge amount of progress and have a lot of great stories to tell.
Po or Sita? Go ahead, Po.
My actions for me is just to make sure all those, ASEAN generation, the women grow up with the right culture to speak to their self, and just to be confident since from the beginning. That's what my action plan. And then also another thing is, I think as a woman, we like to be perfection for whatever we do, and we also that's make us less confident. So for me, what I want to say to all the women to be like, action plan is for my platform, I want to give space to all those women entrepreneurs, to welcome all those entrepreneurs to come, women entrepreneurs to come and pitch at my events, and then make as many mistakes as possible for my platform, because then I want to create a safe place for women to showcase their ideas and whatever it is. And that's my action plan for women entrepreneur, and welcome everybody to come and pitch at my events. That's it.
Great.
Yes, thanks, Paul. I think for me, it is about being aware of our circles of influence. I mentioned this earlier. And asking the simple question in any circle that you are in, whose opinion is being left out and whose opinion can I invite into this space? That covers allyship, that covers inclusion, creates more equitable conversation. So thinking about your circle of influence and asking that question, who can I include in this space?
Great.
I think for me, if we can take one thing to the forum that's going to help accelerate diversity and inclusion across ASEAN, would be to continue to integrate the policies across all the member countries. But there are still too many differences, whether it's participation, access, different regulatory roles, if we can bring a playing field together and create more opportunities as an integrated set of countries, this is a huge part of the world with an enormous power, resources, and youth. So this is an area that we need to continuously promote, but also create more, simplify and create more homogeneous set of regulatory rules.
I had 3 very quick action items. Very good point around measuring the actual empowerment. I don't think there's a measure, and I'll take it upon myself to create that in what we call the financial inclusion program that we are about to roll out, where if somebody is claiming, whether it's a grant, whether it's a loan, whether it's inclusion, I will give it a measurement score. And the more you score, it's sort of like a carbon credit, but the more you empower or an empowerment score, the more you'll have a brag factor. So everybody jumps onto that, everybody's incentivized to do it. Number 2 would be around, somebody mentioned cartel type consortia. One of you mentioned this old boys club and cartel type thing. When I start seeing that, I will take it upon myself, whether it's at Blackstone, IDG, or in a public figure, to try and curtail that, saying this is unbecoming of a company. And I think, lastly, to Crystal's point, if I feel that this conversation is steering more from a personal perception rather than a reality, I will take it upon myself to correct him or her, saying, I think you're talking from your own perception or your own bias, but it doesn't seem that way. So, 3 action items.
Great, thank you. I resonate a lot with Sachin about storytelling. I think being authentic, being vulnerable, and telling your own journeys and sharing more of that, because the world needs more authenticity. This is exactly what I'm trying to exemplify as well myself. The other is really around females, how we can't have it all. Like this whole narrative around can we have it all? We just can't have it all at once, right? So we can have it with the phases and the decisions that we make. But one of the defining moments or challenges, I would say, is embracing the policies and also influencing governments to allow IVF and egg freezing around this region, because women do want to delay birthing and delay procreation and delay all of that, because we want to have a career, and giving the optionalities of actually choosing to be able to have it when we want it, because governments are not all very supportive at the moment. Even our home country here, because of a behind the scenes movement, a long white paper has been written, and then we implemented that, and it's still not really surfacing. But then they actually talked about IVF, but in the past, this is a mature country. IVF was only available, for terminal illness women. And also, egg freezing is not available here. And now that they're allowing IVF, but it caps at 35. So I don't know who's making these policies. I would love to even be invited to the table and actually change the narrative, because now you see more and more women having babies above 40. Why do they stop it at 35? So what algorithm gave them that 35 was the ceiling?
Even egg freezing is 35.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So,
And surrogacy is not permitted, just to add on.
Yeah. So,
Draconian, but yeah.
Very passionate subject. So thank you everyone for your participation. We really appreciate it. This is the inaugural event, and I'm sure that with these discussions and passions to change and drive change, we can make this world a better place, especially starting in ASEAN.
Thank you.